I try to but there's one my girlfriend is water.
Okay, so let's start. Do you have any question that you want to ask? So the first test is on 22nd, and it will cover the material, or it will include the materials that we will study a week from today, up to that point. Okay. So before I start, I think I wanted to show you that if you take this, assume that this water is at rest. It's not quite at rest. Can all of you see, can Wake Forest people see this bag? That bag of water I have in my hand?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay. So if I do like this, what do you think is the strain induced in the water? Like how much? Roughly guess it. See, I was in this position before, so that's the reference configuration. Okay? So we deform it and we go to this configuration. So how much is the strain in, roughly, like what kind of strain levels are induced? So they can be like 100% or 200%, something like that. But what is the stress in the water? It's still hydrostatic pressure. So that's because we assume water to be inviscid, like non-viscous material. So the strains are the stresses in water or in a fluid. They do not depend upon the strain level. Okay. Stresses in a fluid generally do not depend upon the strain level. However, they depend upon the strain rate level. So that's what happens when you press your shock absorber. Okay, so it depends how fast you are pressing it. That means how fast you are braking or you are applying the brakes. Okay. So I should not say shock absorber, I should say brake pedals. So depending upon how fast you press the brake pedal, the force exerted by the brakes varies. So it depends upon the strain rate, not upon strain. Okay, so what we were studying was that if we take this line element PQ, it deforms into P prime Q prime, and the rate of change of line P prime Q prime is given by delta Vi over delta Xj P prime Q prime J. So it's where delta Vi over delta Xj is the velocity gradient, or we said d over dt of dxi is Lij dxj, where Lij is the velocity gradient of velocity with respect to present coordinates, or coordinates in the present configuration. You have this in your notes, because this is from last time. And then we wrote L as the symmetric part and the skew symmetric part. So the symmetric part is the strain rate tensor. Skew symmetric part is the spin tensor or the vorticity vector. It's related to the vorticity vector. And last time we more or less stayed focused on the spin tensor or the vorticity vector. And today we will stay focused on the symmetric part, Dij. So what does Dij mean? Okay. So that's where we are headed. What does Dij mean? So to do that, let's look at the length of a line element. So this is the present configuration. So we are in the present configuration. So we look at line element P prime Q prime. Its length is dxi, which means dx1 square plus dx2 square plus dx3 square. Now differentiate both sides with respect to time, keeping big X fixed. So this is what in fluid mechanics they call substantial derivative or total derivative So this is derivative keeping big X, uppercase X fixed. So we get d over dt of ds square equals, use the chain rule of calculus. So you get dxi, d over dt of dxi plus the same term again because dxi. So you get twice of this. What about on the left hand side? So we have twice of ds, d over dt of ds equal twice. What is d over dt of dxi? That's what we started with. d over dt of dxi is Lij dxj. d over dt of dxi, the time rate of change of the vector p prime q prime. It's not the length of p prime q prime, it's the vector p prime q prime. So the vector can change, as one of you told me last time, because its length changes or its direction changes or both change. Okay, so this is then twice Lij dxj. So that's the first term, dxi. So this two I copied here. Does it make sense? So now we write Lij as Dij plus Wij. This 2 and 2 of course cancels. So we have ds, d over dt of ds. Now Lij is Dij plus Wij. So we have dxj dxi. Does it make sense? So we are substituting for Lij equal to Dij plus Wij. Now, so we can expand this. So we get Dij, dxj, dxi plus Wij, dxj, dxi. No big deal, right? That's, if you recall homework number 2, problem number 2, it said if Tij equal to minus Tji, show that Tij, Ai, Aj is 0. Wij equals minus Wji because it's skew symmetric. So what is this quantity equal to then? Wij is skew symmetric. So if you remember, you can look up your notes, like homework assignment number 2. I think it was problem number 2. One of the problems there said if Tij equals minus Tji, show that Tij, Ai, Aj is 0. So this thing is 0. Just write it longhand. W11, W22, W33 are 0 because W is skew symmetric, and W12 term will cancel with W21 term because one is negative of the other. Okay? So let's divide by ds square both sides. So we get 1 over ds, d over dt of ds equals dij dxi over ds dxj over ds. Even though I have switched here, it doesn't make any difference. So long as you are putting indices, it does not make any difference where you write what. If you use matrix notation, then it makes a difference. But if you are using index notation, it does not make any difference. I have not gained anything. I just wrote it out of habit like that. Okay, so what is dxi over ds? What is dxi over ds? What is the physical meaning of that? Direction cosines, or you will say it's a unit vector along p prime q prime. It's a unit vector along p prime q prime. So what notation do you like to use for unit vector along p prime q prime? It's not one of the coordinate axes. Pardon? Capital M we have been using for quantities in the reference configuration. So you should use lowercase. So if we use say M, so M is a unit vector along P prime Q prime. Then this will equal Dij Mi Mj. Okay. On the right hand side, Dij Mi Mj, it is the sum of 9 terms. I goes from 1 to 3, j goes from 1 to 3. Now let's consider a special case. And that special case is when p prime q prime is along the x1 axis. When p prime q prime is along x1 axis. Remember, we derived this equation for a general case. So what is Mi equal to then? For this choice, this is along the coordinate axis, say x1. Yes?
Delta I1.
Delta I1 or delta 1I, whichever you like. So d over ds of, sorry, this was 1 over ds, not d over ds. Sorry, that was 1 over ds, not d over ds. I goofed when I wrote it. So we have 1 over ds, d over dt of ds equals dij delta I1 delta J1. Is still the sum of 9 terms, but out of those 9 terms, how many are zeros? Yes? 8? So it's really equal to D11. I think we have not been pressing that button. So out of these 9, 8 are zeros. So it's equal to D11. So now we can say what is D11, what is the physical interpretation of D11. So D11 equals the rate of change of length per unit length. ds over dt is the rate of change of length, because ds is the length element, d over dt is time rate of change. So ds over dt is the rate of change of length. We are dividing by ds, so that's the rate of change of length per unit length of a line element that is presently, that now in the present configuration is parallel to the x1 axis. So what will be the units of D11? Katie? Okay, what are the units of, say, I don't know whichever units you like for length. So what units do you like for length? Do you like miles, kilometers, centimeters, millimeters, micrometers, angstroms? So what do you like for ds? Jessica?
Meters.
Meters. Okay. So what do you like for time? Units of time. Pardon? Second. So this is meter per second. When you are dividing by meters. So we have 1 over meter, meter over second. So the units are per second. So, okay, this is strain rate. What are the units of strain? So what are the units of strain? Pierce?
Length over length.
So they are non-dimensional. So strain rate is per second. I mean, even though you might say meter per second, but it's really per second. Okay? So D11 is the strain rate, which means rate of change of length per unit length of a line element presently parallel to x1 axis in the present configuration, in the deformed shape. What about D22? That's x2 axis. D33 will be x3 axis. Yeah. Now, let's look at the off-diagonal terms. I mean, we want to say, look at, we still are at P prime, Q prime, and we take two line elements, P prime, Q prime, and P prime, R prime. The angle theta between them. Now we want to see how fast that angle is changing. Remember, no, P prime, Q prime is changing in length as well as changing in direction. P prime, R prime is changing in length as well as changing in direction. We want to see how fast the angle between the two lines is changing. And that will determine more or less the shear strain. So we already talked about the change in length of any line element, P prime, Q prime, and this one gives us the change in length per unit length. Now we want to see what is the change in angle, what is the rate of change of angle between any two line elements. So we are not selecting line elements to be parallel to the x1 and x2 axis. We are just taking them arbitrarily. And eventually, to interpret results, we will simplify it. Okay? So let's take, now you need to bear with me about the notation part, because P prime, Q prime, let's call it dx1, and this one is dx2. Those parentheses 1 and 2, they just are names for vectors, they don't mean components. Okay, these are names for vectors rather than the components. Like this superscript 1 and superscript 2 in parentheses are not components. They just are like vector 1 and vector 2. Okay, now how will I find the angle between two vectors? You have done this exercise before. So how will we find the angle between vectors dx1 and dx2? Josh?
Dot product.
Dot product. Very good. So let's take the dot product between two vectors. So the dot product will be dx1 dotted with the dx2 will give me, which is dxi, and this equals length of vector 1, length of vector 2, cosine theta, dxi1, dxi2. So the dot product I can write either as dxi, or I can write as length of vector 1 times length of vector 2 times cosine of the angle between them. So now differentiate both sides with respect to time, because that's what we want to find. We want to find the rate of change of angle. So if I differentiate it, and we are going to denote the time derivative by a superimposed dot instead of writing d over dt. In continuum mechanics, this is commonly used. This a superimposed dot means time derivative keeping big X fixed, not little x, big X fixed. So this is not partial time derivative, this is total time derivative, keeping big X fixed. And you will have a question like that in the exam. So remember to know the difference between partial derivative with respect to time and total derivative with respect to time. Yes?
Okay, so what is the line with?
Line means I'm differentiating both of them.
Okay.
So that line means I'm differentiating both of them. I'm regarding both of them as one thing now. See, otherwise I have to differentiate three quantities. This is the product of ds1, ds2 cosine theta, but I'm going to combine two of them into one. So I differentiate the first quantity times second function. What is the derivative of cosine? Negative sign. So that will be minus ds1 ds2 sine theta theta dot equals differential of dx1 dxi2 plus dxi derivative of dx2. Chain rule of calculus, like different first function as it is, derivative of second plus derivative of first, second function as it is. Well, you got mad at it. Is it okay?
Is the line going over the cosine too, or?
No. This is the next line. So,
Okay.
I'm differentiating this quantity. See, this thing equals that. So first I differentiated this one. That is the top line. Now I'm differentiating this quantity, and that is these two. Did I confuse you, or? A equals B, so A dot equals B dot. But this has three terms, so I'm writing ds1, ds2 as 1. Because eventually what I'm going to do is choose theta equal to 90 degrees. So the first term will cancel. Cosine of 90 is 0. That's why I'm not expanding it. So I'm going to choose one line parallel to x1 axis, another line parallel to x2 axis. So my theta will be 90, cosine theta will be 0. So there is no point in my writing these terms when they are going to vanish. Okay? So now this one is Lij dxj1 this one is Lij dxj2. Okay? So there are two ways to go from here. One possibility is change this k, change this j to k. It's a dummy index, right? So we can change it to anything we like. And the reason we are doing is because we have j here, so I'm going to change this I to j. See, here I have dxj1, so I now made it dxj1. Is it okay? These are dummy indices. You can write anything, any letter you like. Now, I go back and change this to I. Pierce doesn't like it. See, I could not have done in the first attempt because if I had changed j to I, I would have gotten 4 i's. That would be meaningless. So, but first I change j to k, then I can change I to j, and now I can change k to I. And the reason is I have dxj1, now I have dxj1, I have dxi2, I have dxi2. So I can take these as common factors.
Dr.
If I do
Batra,
that, yes?
if you had kept it originally how it was, would you get
Yes.
the same? Would you get the same answer as how you're simplifying it now?
Yes, yes. And absolutely the same answer.
It just makes it easier to do the math by doing this.
Yes. See, if I had kept the way it was before, we could write Lij as Dij plus Wij. Same thing on this Lij, you write Dij plus Wij. And you will get, final answer will be same. It's math. It's all we are doing is 2 plus 2 is 4, and maybe you write 2 plus 1 plus 1. Okay? So you still get 4. So the final answer will be same. No, yes. And the reason I'm doing it is so that you get used to it, not that I like this way. Either way would have been okay. Okay, now, since we did it, so we take dxj and dxi, oh, this is 1 and this is 2 as common factors. So we have Lij here and Lji here. So we have Lij from the first term and Lji from the second term, which means it's L transpose. So it's L plus L transpose. So what is that equal to? We wrote L was equal to D plus W. We wrote L was equal to D plus W. So L transpose is D transpose plus W transpose, but D is symmetric. That means transpose equals the tensor itself, and W is skew symmetric. So W transpose equals minus W. So now if you add L plus L transpose, you get what? So W, this one will cancel with that, you will get 2D. Is it okay? So we get the end result is then ds1 ds2 dot cosine theta minus ds1 ds2 sine theta theta dot equals twice dij dxi1 dxj2. And no, it does not make any difference whether you put 1 whether I is on 1 or j is on 1 because D is symmetric. Okay, so now we can divide by ds1, ds2. So divide both sides by ds1, ds2. So if I divide it, this will become 1. So here I am dividing it. And I divide it here also. Divide both sides by ds1, ds2. And as one of you told me, this is a unit vector, or these are the components of a unit vector 1. And these are the components of unit vector 2. So this is equal to twice Dij Mi1 Mj2. Remember, M superscript 1 in parentheses is one vector, M superscript 2 in parentheses is a second vector. So let's take Mi1 equal to say delta I2, Mj2 equal to delta J3. So what we are doing is we are taking one vector parallel to x2 axis and the other vector parallel to x3 axis. We are taking one vector parallel to x2 axis in the present configuration, another vector parallel to x3 axis. So I purposely took 2 and 3 rather than 1 and 2. You can choose any two vectors you like, they are mutually perpendicular. And in this case, I chose the ones along the coordinate axis. Okay, so what do we get then? What is the angle theta between these two vectors? 90 degrees. And cosine of 90 is 0. So this term, the first term, vanishes because it's cosine of 90. So we do not have to evaluate all that good stuff. I mean, if you like, you can evaluate it, but you don't have to. So cosine 90 is 0, sine 90 is 1. So what we get then is minus theta dot equal to twice Dij delta I2 delta J3, and that's twice D23. So the off-diagonal components of the strain rate tensor, they determine rates of change of angles, rates of decrease of angles, not the really change. There's a minus sign here. So if D23 is positive, that means the angle between vectors that are presently parallel to x2 and x3 coordinate axes is decreasing. If D23 is positive, then the angle between them, the angle between vectors which are presently, which now are parallel to x2 and x3 axis, is decreasing. And the rate of decrease is equal to twice the value of D23. Similarly for D31 and D12. Okay. So the diagonal components give us how fast, how rapidly the line elements are changing per unit length. Off-diagonal components give us how rapidly the angle between two mutually perpendicular lines is decreasing. Okay. Does it make sense? See, these are not strains, these are strain rates. So if we ask you which line element, along which line element is the strain rate maximum or minimum? Along which line element in the present configuration is the strain rate maximum or minimum? Is the question making sense? Previously we talked about along which line element the strain was maximum or minimum. So how did you find the line elements along which the strain was maximum or minimum in the present configuration? You have done this homework, yeah, I think you know the answer. Anyone else? You have done this homework.
Eigenvalues and vectors.
Press that.
The eigenvalues
Of what?
and vectors of, is it for the present configuration?
Present configuration.
Yeah, find it for B.
Yeah, B, good. So the eigenvectors of B as in boy, the eigenvectors of the matrix B, that's the left Cauchy-Green tensor, give you directions along which strains are maximum. Roughly speaking, change in length per unit length. In finite deformation, we compare squares of lengths, not the lengths themselves. Okay, we compare squares of lengths, not the lengths. Now the exercise is different. Now it says at point P prime, along which line is the rate of change of length per unit length maximum or minimum? So what we have to find is we are in the present configuration. This is the point P prime. There are infinitely many vectors passing through P prime. Along which direction so we are calling this M. So find M. Find M passing through P prime, of course, such that first M has to be a unit vector. So that will give us the direction. Find the unit vector M passing through P prime such that the rate of change of length per unit length is an extremum. Extremum, it could be minimum or maximum, but I cannot tell you beforehand whether it's maximum or minimum. So extremum covers both. It can be either minimum or maximum. So let's see how many of you were not sleeping in today's class. Today's class, we covered it in the last 30 minutes. We covered the material that gives me the rate, that gives us the rate of change of length per unit length. So what is that quantity? It is in your notes. We just covered it in the last 30 minutes. What is the rate of change of length per unit length along vector M? The rate of change of length per unit length along the unit vector M is Dij Mimj. Okay, we just covered it. So now then the problem, mathematically then, the problem is find M such that m dot m is 1 or m dot m minus 1 is 0, and dij mi mj is an extrema. So that's the mathematical problem. How many of you think this problem is strange and you have not studied it before? So none of you thinks it is strange. So who will give me the answer? What is the answer of this problem? So which vector m will give me the maximum or minimum rate of change of length per unit length? You have studied this problem before. In this class, you have done a homework, possibly more than one homework problem. And you answered the question in the last 5 minutes, 4 minutes, 3 minutes. Eigenvector of D. So the eigenvector of D is the direction
That's
along
D as in
which,
dog, correct?
yes, D as in David as written here. Right, yes, D as in David as written here, right. We are talking about strain rates. So D as in dog, the eigenvector of D, and eigenvector of D. We still have time. I will quit on time, don't worry. An eigenvector of D will give us the direction along which stretching, ing at the end. So if you add stretch is strain, is change in length, roughly, stretch is final length over initial length. Stretch is final length over initial length. Now all of you know English better than I do, or most of you I should say. So if you add ing at the end, it becomes rate. Okay. So it is rate of change of length per unit length. And if you don't believe it, you should look up in the dictionary, in a dictionary. So stretching gives you rates. Stretch was final length over initial length. So this will be the rate of change of length per unit length, which is maximum or minimum. That is the eigenvalue of D. Okay. So if we write Dij Nj equal to Dni, so D is an eigenvalue, and N is the corresponding eigenvector. How many eigenvalues will D have? Ashley? Ashley at Wake Forest? So how many eigenvalues will D have?
3.
Good. Will they be real? Kunz at Oak Ridge?
They should be real.
They should be. Do you have any reason why they should be real?
Well, D is symmetric.
Good. So D is symmetric, so they should be real. Will they be positive, or must they be positive? Samitha at Wake Forest? Must they be positive? So we have established they are real.
I don't remember the criteria for it being positive.
Okay. So they need not be positive, because for positive, D has to be a positive definite matrix. For positive, D has to be a positive definite matrix, and we do not know that. I mean, there is no guarantee that the rate of change of length per unit length must be positive. if the material is if the material is incompressible. Now this one we have not, we have covered and we have not covered. So it depends how far you will think. If the material is incompressible, can you say anything about an eigenvalue of D? If the material is incompressible,
The eigenvalue in one direction and the eigenvalue in another direction are related by the Poisson's ratio?
no. Poisson's ratio has nothing to do with the D. Poisson's ratio has nothing to do with the D. D is strain rate. It's not strain tensor. So it has nothing to do with, what we can say is that the sum of the three eigenvalues will be 0. Sum of the three eigenvalues of D will be 0. Okay. So what else can we say about? Now let's say n is an eigenvector of D. Yeah. So let's assume we are talking about n as an eigenvector of D. Then what will happen to n dot? Ni. To find that, again we basically look at dxi, which is ds ni. So take a small vector parallel to ni. Remember, we want to find ni dot, where ni is an eigenvector of D. So it's a special n, not any n. N is an eigenvector of D, and I want to find what is the rate of change of n. Is the exercise clear? Actually, what I'm really shooting for is giving you another interpretation for the spin tensor. What does the spin tensor do? So if you take the time derivative of both sides, on the left hand side we get Lij dxj. On the right hand side we get ds dot ni plus ds ni dot. Chain rule. Lij is dij plus wij. Dxj is ds nj. ds dot ni plus ds ni dot. Okay, so divide by ds. Divide by ds both sides. I'm looking for ni dot, so I have no ni dot. So what is dij nj? Dij nj by definition is d and I plus wij nj. What is ds bar dot over ds? Here, ds bar dot over ds is dij minj, and now it will be ninj because we are working with the vector along n. So it will be, and I cannot use I and j again, so I'm going to write dkl nk nl ni plus ni dot. If if you recall, ds dot over ds was dij mimj. And we are replacing m by n, but I cannot use indices I and j because I already have an I. So I'm changing ij to kl. But what is this quantity now? dkl and l. Remember, it's an eigenvector. So this will be equal to d nk. Then I have another nk here, ni plus ni dot. But what is nk?
0.
nk 0. No, it's not 0. It's 1. N is a unit vector. nk means n1 square plus n2 square plus n3 square. Right? nk means n1 square plus n2 square plus n3 square. So it's 1. Scalar 1, not number 1. So dni cancels on both sides, and what we get then is that wij nj equals ni dot. So the spin tensor operating upon an eigenvector of d, the spin tensor operating upon an eigenvector of d gives you the rate of change of that vector. Okay, the rate of change of an eigenvector of d equals the spin tensor operating upon that vector. Okay, so we are almost getting close to the end of this chapter. So we should be able to finish it, I guess, in the next couple of days. Okay, so we'll see you. Oh, homework. I think one part we skipped in this homework, which said, I don't know, show that, and I did not want to make the next homework because you have a test next week. So you can, I can prepare a homework if you like, but I am giving you that time to study for the test. Okay, so there is no, except for 1D or 1E, whatever that problem is left.
Oh, 1C is what it is.
Okay, 1C.
Yeah.
So only problem 1C is due next week on Monday. Yeah. Oh, then
Can you email that out? I got it.
it's okay. If you don't have, I will return it on Wednesday.
I need to do it, but I got it written down.
And I will return this homework on Wednesday. You will have it. Okay.